Welcome back to the first team. I'm Joe DeLeone. Joining me as always, good friend, my co-host, Ryan Roberts, NFL draft analyst. Today we're going to be doing our next scouting report episode. We're probably going to start to ease down on the scouting reports because we're going to be doing, the idea is Senior Bowl previews soon, talking about the guys to know, and then Senior Bowl will consume the week itself. And then after that, we're going to officially start doing our position rankings.
And
Today
combine,
wait. There's a whole month until the combine comes around. So we'll be doing the position rankings, and then there'll be a pause for the combine, and then we'll go back to the position rankings.
I mean, we only record once or twice a week though, so it's gonna come quick.
We're gonna ramp up. The idea is now that the national championship's behind us, which was a whirlwind. Now we're gonna ramp up a little bit more. Today we're going to talk about Brock Bowers and Jatavian Sanders, the two top tight ends in the 2024 NFL draft class. Ryan, I want to start us off here with Brock Bowers, 6'4", 240 pounds, losing his hair a little bit when I saw him in person, but easily one of the most unassuming, most gifted tight ends. Seriously, last year, I'm joking, at the college football playoff media availability, it was in Los Angeles, so a couple of us with Believe went. And I couldn't even find him. The whole time I'm like, where's Brock Bowers? And he's just sitting down, and the underclassmen didn't have to talk to the media if they didn't want to. And he's just kind of sitting down, hunched over in his chair, doesn't stand up. He just looked like a big receiver. And you wouldn't have guessed that this is the most physically talented tight end, one of the most physically talented to ever come out in the NFL draft, the most just dominant player in college football. He is a freak, and he wasn't even that highly recruited of a guy. Like, he was highly recruited, but he's coming out of Napa Valley, wasn't even the top tight end in his class. The story of Brock Bowers and following him has to be one of the craziest players, and I love him as a prospect.
Oh yeah, man. He is. I mean, we'll get into the background a little bit, and we've already done the background when we did our kind of summary eval on him. But Joe, I mean, he's one of those players that I think that some people are going to overthink a little bit. And I think there's probably about 3 or 4 guys in this class that they're going to overthink tremendously. Like him, Marvin Harrison Jr., Joe Alt are probably my top 3, where it's just like people are going to come at them and be like, oh, I mean, I don't like this part. And it's just like, guys, just stop, man. Just take a step back for a second, because this kid, like you said, he's a Napa Valley kid, California, comes across the entire country to go play at the University of Georgia. And Joe, from the second he was at Georgia, from the very first day he was at Georgia, for the very first game he was at Georgia, he was a superstar. He's been a superstar for 3 years. This wasn't a kid that just burst onto the scene this year or last year. Like, he has been a star for 3 years for the University of Georgia, and a big reason why they were able to win back-to-back national championships during his freshman and sophomore campaign. Freaky athlete. If you look into his high school backgrounds, as a sophomore in high school, he had run 4.5s electronically timed and had a 40-inch vertical. As a sophomore in high school.
And he might end up being faster. He's probably going to run the 4.4s.
Probably more explosive, man. That's what happens with those types of kids. As they grow into their body and they add good weight to their frame, they usually get more explosive. It usually happens when you get into college. So, yeah, man, freak show athletes. One of the more dominant pass receiving tight ends that we'll ever see. I remember the Kyle Pitts thing, right? Because people are going to be like, oh, Kyle Pitts was a flame out or whatever. But Brock Bowers is a much better prospect, in my opinion, than Kyle Pitts, and was a much better player than Kyle Pitts. We were just owing and awing over Kyle Pitts for being 6'6", 240 pounds and running 4.4 and that type of stuff, right? But there were parts of Kyle Pitts' game that you could knock and be like, I don't like the blocking. He's not super consistent as a route runner. Maybe he's not the strongest player through contact. That's not really Brock Bowers, man. He's pretty physically adapts. Like, he can work through contact. He's actually a surprisingly good blocker too. Like, he's not a guy where you're just going to put his hand in the dirt 90% of the time or whatever. But as a detached, movement-based player, he blocks really well on the perimeter as well. I mean, this is just a really good player, man. And maybe the best player in the draft without positional value kicked in. Maybe. It's arguable. It's very arguable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, actually, I'm not going to say it's not arguable, but yeah, I think there's a really good argument for that. The thing that's caused Kyle Pitts to not flame out, but not to work is being misused in a scheme that's asking him to, he's turned into just a big decoy and they ask him to block too much. That, to your point, is he's physically gifted and could be really good, but he needs to be used more as like an X receiver. They need to use him and that was how Florida deployed him. They just used him as their number one receiver. They put him in jump ball situations and they asked him
Yep.
to just go out there and dominate. That's not Brock Bowers. What makes Brock Bowers the better tight end prospect and justified in going in the top 4. And this is why I think he's going to get overthought. So many people are going to bring up Kyle Pitts, and I'm going to tell all those people to shut the hell up. Shut the hell up. He is not the same player. He is worthy of going in the top 5. I have a mock draft coming out, and I actually have him going in the top 5 to the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that this guy is just a freakish vertical athlete. He redirects and moves really well. His route running is great. His impact after the catch too, I think, is going to be what's going to end up being the most dangerous. That he's able to shake some guys. He's able to separate once he picks up that speed, and he accelerates just so quickly. The one thing that's just a little bit of a caveat, I think that he shows good physicality in contested situations, but I feel like his hands are a little bit inconsistent. You would hope that a guy who is as impactful as a receiver would maybe be a little bit more sure-handed when he's getting hit. I don't know if it's partially because he was a little banged up this year that
He's also a little
impacted
bit
that.
smaller, I mean, he's
He's 240. He's not like a bulked up dude. He's 6'4". He's not like he's 6'6", 250.
Right. Well, that's the main point, is that the reason that you're not going to use him 90% in line and you're not going to ask him to win consistently. Well, not consistently. That's a bad word. The reason that he's going to have an occasional drop or an occasional, just ball pops out through contact is because he's listed at 6'4", 240. So what does that tell you, Joe? I mean, you saw him in person. What is he?
Yeah.
6'3" and some odd and 230 something. Like, he's probably not the biggest guy in the world. But I don't care ultimately. Like, I really don't care, because he plays a physical brand of football for his size, and here's the question, and I'll answer it to start, and then you tell me if you agree or if there's a different trait that you think is his best. His most rare trait, in my opinion, because there's a lot of great traits that he has, and there's a lot of traits that you could even maybe borderline rare that Brock Bowers possesses. The rarest trait, though, in my opinion, is that acceleration. It is bananas, man.
He
There's other tight
accelerates like
ends.
a running back. He accelerates like a running back.
There are other tight ends out there that probably run as fast as Brock Bowers. I'm sure Evan Ingram is one of them. I'm sure Kyle Pitts is another. Like, there's other tight ends that run as fast as Brock Bowers. But I have never seen a tight end get up to top speed as fast as I've seen Brock Bowers do it, which makes sense why he had a 40-inch vert verified when he was a sophomore in high school, because that kid is explosive in short areas, man. Off the line of scrimmage, he gets up to his top speed quickly. I remember as a sophomore, I think it was the national championship game, or if it was maybe an SEC championship game. I forget. It was some big game, though. They threw Brock Bowers a bubble screen near the end zone. And Joe, I have never seen a 240-pound kid catch a football and accelerate to 100 miles an hour as fast as what I saw him. And he scored a touchdown on it. I was just like, that's different, man. That's unique. If he was a tight end, I mean, if he was a wide receiver, just a big body wide receiver, and he did that, I would still call it rare. He has rare explosiveness for a big pass catcher. Forget tight end for a second. He's a rare acceleration player.
Well, so you mentioned Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram. I'm trying to think of like Noah Fant's like another really fast tight end in the NFL.
Yeah.
The thing that there's usually 2 buckets with tight ends. There's the explosive, fast receiving tight ends that can't block, and then there's the more well-rounded guys that aren't going to separate as much, aren't really yak threats, and get their nose dirty and like the block, yada yada yada, and that are more of the short-handed 5-yard pass that you throw him the ball and maybe picks up a couple extra yards because he fights for the yards. I think Brock Bowers is this rare blend that we don't typically get that's able to do both things. And one of the things that we talked about in the offseason is how does he improve as a blocker? And I said that I think that this kid is going to get better as a blocker because he shows an intent, he shows a willingness, he shows, as you talked about, a physicality, a meanness. And I saw, that future of him as an NFL blocker this year. I tweeted out clips of him a while ago, and I threw in some blocking plays that he had this season that looked really, really promising of him getting dirty and driving guys off the
Yep.
ball and driving him to the sideline, driving him into the ground, he can end up being a really good blocking tight end as well. And him having that well-roundedness is going to make him even more dangerous because you don't know what his role is on the field. And that to me,
Yes.
again, is why I think right now he is my top prospect. I don't think that Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels, who I'm yet to like do my final grade on, are the only remaining top guys in that discussion that could knock him off or going to knock him off.
Yep.
Brock Bowers is my number one player. He had the best season despite injury, and his just rarity is out of this world. I don't think
Yep.
we're going to see a tight end like this in a while.
I always look to the rarest football players in a class because you remember the Kyle Hamilton class 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
my thought on him? He was the only player in the 2022 NFL draft that I would have said was rare. Nobody else, I mean, everybody else was, I mean, there were several other really good prospects. There were a couple great ones as well in that class. But was there any other prospect that you would say is rare, like a 6'4", 220-pound safety that did the things Kyle Hamilton did on the field? That's rare, right? Brock Bowers is one of the probably one, maybe two players in this class that I would say are rare football players or that you just don't see come around too often. Like they are just a different breed. I compared him in the preseason. I still like the comp. If you remember Kellen Winslow Jr., who played with the Cleveland Browns, Miami, I understand he's not a good person and there's baggage off the field. But
I
as
know.
a
I'm
football
just kind
player,
of grimacing
I
jokingly.
know, but as a football player, man, I went back and looked at his combine stuff. He was right around 6'4", a hair under, so 6'3" and I think it was like 6'3" and 7/8 or something like that. So that could be around Brock Bowers. He bulked up. He only played at Miami around like 235, 240, but he bulked up to like 247 at the combine, and I think that kind of hurt his testing numbers. I mean, he ended up running like 4.62, which is still a really good number for a tight end. But if you remember Kellen Winslow, which is why I think he has parallels to Brock Bowers, he was kind of that slender, like in between H-back tight end body frame, but he had high effort as a blocker and played a lot more physical than you would expect for a tight end his size, but he was a rare athlete. And Kellen Winslow Jr. was a rare athlete. He could run routes. He could get vertical. He was a really rare talent at the position. And I think that is what Brock Bowers is as well, man. He does some things athletically as a tight end, which don't see come around very often. So he's different, man. He's a different type of athlete.
Yeah. Love Brock Bowers. He's going to end up being the one guy that every time you mock him in the top 10, everyone's going to get so upset.
Yes.
And then in like 2 years, everyone's going to be like, why wasn't he like the second overall pick? It's like, gee, I
Joe.
wonder why. Like you guys all complained about it. And then now here we are.
You were mad at me when we did our mock draft because I think my line was I had to get him in the top 10. I had to. He's too
Hey,
good not to go in the top 10. Man. He's too
I don't
good
remember
not
what
to
I
go.
said. I don't remember what I said.
I
I think
mocked
I
him
was
to the
joking.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 10, and you're like, oh, that can't be the reason or whatever. I'm just like, dude, he's just too good not to be a top 10 pick. He has to be a top 10 pick. It just
Yeah.
has to happen.
He feels like a guy that somebody trades up for if he starts to
Yeah.
like slide a little bit. But yeah, I don't think he falls out of the top. I had him last mock draft. I had him at 8 to the Titans, and I had Titans fans and just other individuals complaining like they don't need a tight end. I'm like, well, Treylon Burks is your only like notable receiver, and your offense is Garbo.
Who are their tight ends? Is it Okoronkwo or whatever, the kid from Maryland? Yeah.
Okonkwo is the only kid in like.
Yeah.
Wait.
Because they don't have Jonnu. Jonnu left a couple years ago, and
I really like the idea. Their tight ends are Okonkwo and Kevin Rader and Trevon Wesco. I didn't realize Okonkwo was the Maryland kid from 2 years ago that blew up the combine.
It's like he's like the after catch dude. Yeah. Yep.
He actually had a pretty good year. 500 yards and a touchdown.
It's okay, man. That's replaceable though.
But that's a really good second tight end to have in your offense. But I don't Titans fans, you should be excited. I think the Chargers where I placed him, which we'll end up doing the full mock draft show later on. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. Bet online, where the game starts.